When we purchased this building nearly a generation ago, I immediately went to the streets of Harlem and I began to beckon men that were homeless, men that were drug addicted, men just out of prison, men that were unemployed, to come and to worship in our building. And if they enjoyed the worship, they could stay. They could eat at our kitchen, and they could sleep on our floors, on our pews, or in whatever rooms we had available. And we would feed them and try to help them and teach them to get on their feet. And I slept in the building as well. Elizabeth and I, we slept in a little room in the building on what we call a rollaway bed. There were cots, you could fold them up. She slept on one and I slept on the other. We pulled it together, those two cots together. And but the building was filled with men all over the place. And sometimes they would be arguing. I have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, go down and straighten out an argument between the men. Or a man would start after he's off the streets for a while and he's been able to get a shave and a shower and 3 meals a day that we would serve him. And he began to think about his family and his children that he left and his life that is all messed up. And he started weeping, and I'd have to go down and sit down and console him. I'd counsel with him. Then we'd call up his wife and get him and his children. And many of them later on brought their wives and children to church, and they were married here. Those that weren't married, and they lived here. They worship here, rather. And during the process of doing that for years, I realized something, that I have never met a man that I could not believe in. As you know, I've had the experience of being in prison, some of the toughest prison. I was in Dannemora up in Clinton, New York prison. I was there. I was at Rayford Prison, Union Correctional Facility at Rayford, Florida. I was there. And so I've lived around people and men of ill reputations. But I thought to myself, I said, no matter how low a man is, I think a man has the potential of rising and becoming something. And so I made the statement one day in a sermon, I've never met a man I could not believe in. Now, I've met a whole lot of folk that needed, a lot of work. I met a whole lot of folk who couldn't believe in themselves. But I believe with God, he can take any man and make him a mighty man of God. I believe God can pull a man up out the ditch and set his feet on solid ground. I believe that. I believe it to this day. Last night, I'm dating this message. Today is January the 11th. It's 2 degrees in New York City. It is cold here in the Big Apple. And last night, it was even lower. The temperature was even lower than that. And at about 1 o'clock in the morning, I looked out what was our living room window, which looks onto 123rd Street from this building. Actually, the west window would be what you see behind me now. That would be Lenox Avenue. And then the street coming across will be 123rd Street. And I looked out the window, as I'm given to do from time to time, and there was a Hamite brother, a black man, with a bag, a garbage bag on his shoulders. And it was partially filled. And he stopped at the garbage can. Now, it's cold. It was cold. It's cold now. It's cold. He stopped at the garbage can and began to go through the garbage. Last 1 o'clock in the morning. And I stood there and watched him. And finally, after going through the garbage, he found something and he put it in his bag and he went east on 123rd Street towards Marcus Garvey Park. Now, this church is open to people, to help people. We have helped so many people. This church has pulled a lot of people's lives out of the ditch. And sadly, a lot of times the people, once they get on their feet, they don't come back to try to help other people. They go on about their merry way. They figure, they don't realize, had this church not been here, who knows where they'd be. Many of them would be dead and their lives will still be in the ditch. But this church will help that man. I didn't go out. I didn't run out in my pajamas and run down the street to try to catch him, to try to bring him into the church. And I don't know if he would have come anyway. He may have said, you don't like Obama, so I ain't coming in the church. I don't know. But in this day and time, as cold as it was last night, people are going through the garbage in this 21st century. Men are still going through the garbage, as cold as it was last night. What I did wonder is, where is he going to finally end up? Is he going to get on the train with that bag and sleep on the trains? You know, Eric Adams, not Eric Adams, but D.A. Bragg, District Attorney Alvin Bragg, says that, you know, fare beating and people sleeping on the, you know, petty crimes on the subway, they're not going to punish that anymore. You know, he's not going to punish people for, not going to bring criminal charges against them. But I thought, where's he going to go? Is he can't get in the shelter. They shut the shelters down at about 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and you can't get in. If you're not there, you can't get. So I guess he's going to stay on the street or someplace. I don't know where that man went last night. But for that hour of the night to not have a place to stay and going through the garbage looking for your life, in Harlem, there's an enigma going on here in Harlem. That is to say, all these Japheth people have moved up here and pushed the price of property through the roof. Multi-million-dollar now brownstone houses, the houses across the street, all those houses behind me are multi-million-dollar dwelling places. And some of them are quite beautiful. They have backyards. Some of them have back terraces. Some of them are really quite beautiful. But the fact that Harlem still has men in the middle of the night going through garbage cans means that there's something happening here that is not adding up. Everywhere you look in Harlem now, there are cranes reaching 10, 20 stories high, building new buildings, new constructions all over the place. And yet there are people still sleeping on the streets. I'm wondering if it's some kind of a scheme that's going on where these developers are fleecing the banks, because Harlem is not becoming a, you know, if you will, upscale community. It's still Harlem. That you got more crime and shooting here in Harlem now. You got shootings in broad daylight in Harlem. You didn't have that before. Crime is as bad or worse than it has ever been. Yet all these white people in these million dollar houses, and there are no, if you go down 125th Street, which is, you know, sometimes I go out there incognito, and I want to see Harlem become ATLAH, to be sure, I do. But I have to tell you, I love being around the rhythm of my brothers. You know, to see the merchants out there on the street that don't have a store, but they're vendors. They're selling whatever they're selling, whether they're selling food or clothing, or they're selling some sort of incense, or they're selling music, or, you know, just to be around the rhythm of my brothers. It talks to me. It talks to my body. The smells, you know, and 125th Street sidewalks from one end to the other jammed up. I mean, everybody got a little spot, you know, doing something, selling something, hustling something. But the rhythm of that talks to me. It's I don't know what it is that makes me feel at home with my brother. Many of them would cuss me out if they really knew who I was. You don't like Obama. You ain't for Obama. So I got to go incognito. But you know, they're building these buildings, these high-rise buildings, and they've got these $1 million brownstones, but there's not one high-end store on 125th Street, which is the main thoroughfare. It's now called Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. And they got 116th Street, which is another thoroughfare. The other day, 2 days ago, a man walked into the Burger King on 116th Street between Park Avenue and Lexington Avenue and 3rd Avenue. And there was an 18-year-old girl in there working, and he went in there to rob it. This is just yesterday, 2 days ago. He went in there to rob it. She didn't give him the money. He shot her and killed her, and then ran down 116th Street. They still haven't found him. I mean, a stick-up at a Burger King in Harlem in the 21st century? With all this gentrification going on, all these white folk moved up here, and you still got stick-ups? You got a stick-up? And a young girl lost her life. There's something going on. I could easily say, well, God is just letting them people build those high rises for the Hamites when they finally wake up and start following me and let me teach them and get all that craziness out of them. They can now live in the houses the way God did in Deuteronomy chapter 6 with the Jews when they came out of Egypt into the promised land, all those beautiful houses, the wells that they didn't dig, the houses they didn't build and wells they didn't dig. God put them in there. I don't know that to be the fact. I believe that it can be. Because there are no Gucci's, there are no Armani's, there are no really high-end stores. Everything on 125th Street is still penny ante, it's still nickel and dime. That's a store. And then you got my brother out there on the street. There's something going on here. There's something going on. But for a man to, as cold as it was last night, be going through the garbage cans, all the churches are being torn down, by the way. Pastors are sellouts. These are some of the most despicable individuals. These pastors, and then church people, not on that. I don't know if I won't blame the pastor, because you got some deacons. You got some deacons and some church women that are meaner than a junkyard dog. I've been in the Baptist church, I can tell you. Lord knows I can tell you. You got some deacons and some church women that are meaner than a junkyard dog. And, I blame the pastor, say, well, the pastor's taking all the money. But no, he may be just taking what the deacons is giving him to sell the church. We got an issue here. And I have to tell you that God is real. My brother, let me say this to you, my brother and my sister, all of you. Now, by brother, I don't mean somebody Hamite or black. I mean my brother, my sister. God is real. It were not for God, I'd be dead. It were it not for the Lord. You can't begin to imagine, as unimaginable as it was for that man to be out there on the street, that's more likely than the fact that I'm yet alive today, because the hatred that people have had for me, because I've discussed this and I've told them about Obama and the fake, what a fake it was, and I preached the truth. And then here comes the LGBTQ community, and with their media, with their power, with their influence, I think ours is the only church in New York City that's ever been protested against in modern times by the LGBTQ community. I don't know another church in New York City or New Jersey, but they protested against they marched against our church several times. God is real. If God wasn't real, there ain't no way. All the things that people have imagined to try to do to me, and when they got almost on me to do what they're going, God tripped them and they stumbled and they failed. And the net that they set for me to fall into caught them. The ditch that they thought I would be buried in, they were buried in the same ditch. God is real. You can't imagine the fact that I'm still alive here in Harlem, bringing this truth. Jesus said this, that they killed the prophets, everyone from righteous Abel to Zacharias, who they slew between the porch and the altar. Jesus said, if you bring the truth to people, they will kill you. Telling the truth is dangerous business. It's dangerous. They will kill you. That may in some way disqualify me as a prophet. But I'll tell you, it is because people haven't tried. But I'm going to keep on preaching. Harlem is still Harlem. Even though you got all these Japheth people that moved up here. We'll see what God will do. I ask for your prayers. Don't be so quick to turn me off. Help me. Help me. I'm James David Manning. I am the Lord's servant. Let me just say this. I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm not a Democrat. Definitely ain't that. I'm not a Republican. Sure enough, stomped on ain't that. I'm not a liberal. Ain't gonna never be. And I'm not a conservative. I'm not that. I'm not a red boy or a blue boy. I'm the Lord's servant. Listen, I'm not here in support of Joe Biden and Camelback Hank Black Harris. The last thing on the planet Earth would be I'd be supporting them. I'm not. I don't have anything kind to say about them. I'm not here in support of Trump or any of the Trump supporters. I'm the Lord's servant. I ain't on nobody's side. I'm on the Lord's side. Let's be clear. All right, they'll be calling me a Biden supporter and I done flipped the wig and this, that, and the other. I did endorse Trump. I'll admit that I did, but not now.